We just got to Mexico. We landed in Guadalajara, literally in our Uber right now. There's Tim. We're trying out some phone vlogging, so we'll see how that goes. But here we are. Uber. Colin. There's Colin. So far, Spanish speaking is not going really, really well.
We're leaning on 7th grade to 8th grade Spanish.
Yeah, so give you an update later. Downtown Guadalajara, just drove from the airport. First thoughts so far, there's so many people in so many buildings. All the buildings are super tall, everything's stacked on top of each other. Our Mexican watchers might know this already, but this is our first time to Guadalajara, or Mexico in general, so everything's a first for us. But you can check out this view that we have from our hotel. Just kind of taking it all in right now. We are gonna head to Pyramid of the Sun right now, so we'll see how that goes. So I lied about going to Pyramid of the Sun later. Because Colin lied, and it turns out the Pyramid of the Sun is 6 hours away. And I don't know if Uber would work out. So instead, we're gonna do something equally as fun, and we're gonna go get tacos, like down there. All right, we just finished food. We're in a pretty touristy spot of Guadalajara right now. We are going to the cathedral called
Cathedral of the Assumption of Our Lady.
So we're gonna assume some stuff about Our Lady real quick. This is our first time actually buying food and having dinner or in Mexico, so we had to kind of get used to the prices, but it's pretty cheap.
It's an hour walk.
We ate at a super nice restaurant and got, I'd say it was about $10 a person for probably one of a nicer restaurant you'd sit down in America.
Like really nice. Like they're bringing you like accoutrements and like little super like small like little cups.
Yeah.
Bread.
They made this also right in front of us. We got bottled water. I don't know if that was a nice dinner thing or if that was like a you can't drink the water thing, but I like to assume it was a nice dinner thing. But anyways, I'll update you at the cathedral. So we just got dropped off at the cathedral. Check it out here. It's absolutely beautiful. What I got from our drive in the Uber is that there are absolutely no laws when it comes to Mexican drivers. But the funny thing is that they don't really care. Like nobody was getting angry with each other. Nobody was like our driver. Our driver was the calmest driver in the world. Somebody would like just absolutely run out in front of him and he would just be just fine. So we're here at the cathedral and we're gonna get some footage of it. Check it out, guys.
Broken glass, tonic water, dirty floor, shabby sofa. Come take me home.
Interesting. There's a kind of like a tunnel system under Guadalajara, or at least the main part. It kind of looks like a flea market. And there's that guy. But it's cool. You got to come down here and go to the restroom, and it's really creepy. It's awesome. We just hopped out of our Uber, coming back to our hotel here. It's a good night. We just went sightseeing, saw the cathedral, walked around downtown Guadalajara a little bit. I wanted to hit on something that kind of bothered us. We're no stranger in Texas, especially Houston, to people kind of on corners begging for money. But it's incredible here. And I'm sure a lot of you already know this, but it's incredible here that so many kids are begging for money, and it bothers you, man. And they're really going out of their way to kind of provide little services. I mean, like finding stickers to sell, picking flowers to sell. But I was just curious why so many children are here begging for money as opposed to adults. Honestly, I'd say it was about 50-50 that we saw children to adult ratio. So. If any of you know, just answer in the comments. But we are back at the hotel now. We're gonna settle in for the evening. Tomorrow we're waking up early and going to see clothing factories, checking out manufacturers to see which one we want to choose. See you in the morning. We just finished breakfast. It's 7:40 a.m. here in Guadalajara. Today is our biggest day of the trip. Actually, the real reason we came was to check out suppliers for a clothing company we own part of. So it's basically finding the right supplier, finding if they can meet our requirements, finding if the price is right, finding if they have the right material, etc., etc. So I will update you as soon as I can grab some film of that. We were finishing up our meeting with our first supplier, grabbing a little bit of footage. I couldn't film at all inside the actual factory, just for kind of privacy purposes. We aren't actually working with a specific supplier yet, so bringing the cameras in immediately and just shooting film would be kind of disrespectful. So we're kind of taking things slow right now, good conversations, but we're kind of out in the countryside of Guadalajara right now, visiting a few more factories, but things are going great. It's beautiful. Enjoy the footage. To give an update, we just finished day 2 here in Guadalajara. What we did was check out 2 clothing suppliers today. Our handler just dropped us off. He's a great guy. His name's Mark. He's from Holland. He's just kind of taking us from place to place and interpreting for us for those meetings that are kind of hard to get your point across in English when they speak Spanish. So we just got back to the hotel. We're just gonna eat dinner, get some work done on the laptops, but you're gonna love this footage from today. We're only gonna capture more. We got 2 more meetings tomorrow, another big day tomorrow, and then our flight leaves out Thursday at 3 p.m. So I'll just keep giving you all updates till then. Woke up day 3, Guadalajara. We're going in to get breakfast. None of us woke up at 6 a.m. like we said we would, because yesterday was really long. But should be 2 more suppliers today, and then maybe a little bit more sightseeing. But I'm gonna try and get some more footage of suppliers for y'all, because it's cool footage. Stay tuned. Also, whoever's watching, you have to learn how to make this. It is yugo verde, parsley, celery, pineapple, Mexican cactus, and grapefruit juice. It is the best green juice you've ever had in your entire life. Jump on it. Right now we're actually in a meeting with one of our potential suppliers. We're walking from one of their stores. It's like the Guadalajara equivalent of Academy or Dick's Sporting Goods. We just visited one of their stores, and now we're walking to one of their factories.
Is that police or is that military?
Do they just usually roll around with machine guns?
Yep. Really?
We just finished our going away lunch with our handler Mark, which kind of concluded all 4 meetings with the manufacturers of the clothing. So right now we're walking around downtown Guadalajara. We're actually gonna get some daytime shots of the cathedral again, so we didn't get to the first night. But it's absolutely beautiful around here, and relatively safe for the places that we've been so far. I mean, we're walking around just us 3 downtown, and everything seems fine. If I die, well, it'll be a different story, but maybe we'll get some good shots while we're doing it. Back to the hotel in our Uber, I wanted to hit on an interesting point that someone told us today. Coming from America, it might sound a little closed-minded, and it's just what we hear living in America, that you know, the drug trade is huge down here, and there is a lot of truth to that. The drug trade and cartels control a lot of the country, a whole lot of the country, and they build things like hospitals and schools in different stores and launder money through it. And I was talking to somebody today about the director and just asking him general questions, telling him what we see in movies and TV in America, and he elaborated on a point that was kind of a new way of looking at it for me, which was as long as there's a demand, to kind of back up, we always hear in America, war on drugs, how are we going to stop drugs coming into our country, et cetera, et cetera. But this point that I heard today was, as long as there's a demand for drugs, there will always be a supply. And he basically said, you're not going to stop drugs coming out of Mexico because the scale of the operations here are absolutely unbelievable. And it kind of made me look at things a little bit differently, because we always, as kids from America, we always want to side with, let's fight the war on drugs, let's stop drugs from coming in. But he kind of pointed out that we're fighting the wrong fight. That the fight really needs to be on the demand of drugs, because if there's no demand, then the supply will go out. He said, as long as there's demand, you're never ever going to stop the supply. So it's a lot to think about.
One of the really, really interesting facts was that, a lot of people, actually just about everybody here is Catholic, but they're devout Catholics, and that actually includes the cartels and the drug leaders themselves. So, they'll always say like, no, I don't kill. And it's always, no, they just hire somebody to kill. But another thing is they actually do feel guilty, and that's why they reinvest heavily in, the environment and the culture and just everything around. So whether it's schools, whether it's hospitals, whether it's restaurants, you'll see them and trying to better the community.
People liking them.
Yeah, and people they actually enjoy that. Like, people look up to them, like with Pablo Escobar and El Chapo. Like, they actually looked up to them. It's a very, very weird dichotomy, but I think for the most part, it's a lot. You have to travel to Mexico to really understand. I think we have a view of Mexicans when we're in the United States, but coming here, it's completely different than what you might think.
Alright guys, we're back in the room for the night. We had a big day, 2 more meetings today, a lot of shots downtown, a lot of beautiful architecture. But when visiting the bigger factory, or the biggest factory that we visited in this trip, it kind of brought something to all of our attention when it came to the working conditions that people think manufacturers have in other countries. So first of all, if your opinion is keep the jobs in the US, that's perfectly valid. That can be your opinion. You want more jobs to be held by American citizens, great. But for our case, we are looking in Mexico for manufacturers for this clothing line that we're a part of. And so we're at this big factory, and one thing we noticed was that it was a selling point of the factory owner to treat his employees right. And that was a kind of a shock to all of us. Not that we were expecting the worst conditions in the world or anything like that, but he did come forward, and that was actually in his opening pitch to us, that he took great care of his employees. He showed us his schedule in a prior week. A couple weeks before, he had provided health care for all of them if they needed shots. He gave them vaccines. If they needed medications, he gave them medications. And you could see it on the employees' faces. I mean, they were happy. They were all talking. They were smiling. The working conditions were good. It was a big, busy factory, yes, but it was air conditioned. They got a lunch. All the things you could expect from any job. And one thing that we were concerned with, and that we had never seen firsthand, and that people told us a lot, was these people are taken advantage of in this country. They're abused. They're paid minimum, lower than minimum wage. They're paid pennies, and they can hardly live. They're working forever just to put food on the table. And one thing we didn't realize that we figured out today as well is that these are some of the better paying jobs in these countries. And they're very happy employees, and this isn't the case for all manufacturers and all factories. I'm sure they're terrible ones, but every single factory that we saw in this trip, you could tell that these people were in a better part of society than they could have been because they're in these positions. So it was definitely an eye-opening experience, and it's definitely something we need to think about. But heading to bed for now. Tim's got an early flight in the morning. Colin and I fly out at 3 p.m. We'll probably get a little bit more footage in the morning, and I'll see you then.
Morning, it's Thursday. Tim's flown out. That's not him. Tim took his flight out, and Colin and I are going to Mirador Independence Park to get some footage. Sorry, we're trying to find our Uber driver right now. We're going to Mirador Independence Park to try and get some drone footage, get some more cinematic stuff. We're done with business for the trip, and we fly out at 3 p.m. Check out this footage. That about wraps up our trip here in Guadalajara. We're narrowing down. We visited all the suppliers, and we narrowed down a top 3, and we'll be choosing one very soon, in the next couple of days, as we get things figured out. We saw the best and the worst parts of Guadalajara. And there's some very nice places, and there's some very not so nice places. But one thing you can say about the city is that you cannot speak higher of the Guadalajara people. And they all want to help, no matter what part of the city they're from. They're extremely nice, no matter who you meet. But they do stare. So if you're an American and you come to Guadalajara, people will laser you, man. No matter where you are, they'll spot you. But no negative experiences. Everybody was super polite. Everybody was super helpful. Even when we couldn't speak the native language, they'd help us out wherever we needed to go. We'd make it happen. So I think that wraps up the footage too. I might get a little more if I can, but as of now, we're on our way to the airport, and Colin and I are about to. Wait, say hi. We're about to pass out, dude. We're probably just gonna close our eyes from here and wake up in Houston. But anyways.